The Nevada sun blazed overhead as Danielle Caldwell squinted against the harsh light reflecting off the red sandstone formations. At 29, she'd grown accustomed to these weekend searches. Her hiking boots crunched against the loose gravel as she paused, the lukewarm water from her bottle doing little to combat the dry heat that seemed to suck the moisture from every pore. "Danny, we should probably think about heading back," called out Marcus, one of the regular volunteers who'd been joining these searches for the past 2 years. His face was flushed red beneath his baseball cap, sweat staining the collar of his shirt. Danielle looked around at the small group. 7 people today, down from the 15 who used to show up when the case was still fresh. 4 years had a way of wearing down hope, transforming it into a grim, methodical duty. What had started as desperate searches for survivors had long since become expeditions for closure. "Yeah, you're right," she replied, her voice raspy. Danielle's sister, Marissa, had been 7.5 months pregnant when she and her husband, Ethan, vanished in this canyon. It had been their last adventure before the baby arrived. Danielle pulled out her GPS to mark their search area, a systematic approach they'd developed over the years. The police had long since relegated the case to their cold files, but Danielle couldn't let go. Marissa was her only remaining family. Their parents had died in a car accident 6 years ago. "All right, everyone," Danielle called out. "Let's pack it up for today." When they finally reached the parking lot, the digital clock on her phone read 11 a.m. as it finally reconnected to the network. Her screen lit up with notifications, missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from the same source. Detective Raymond Chen, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Her heart rate spiked as she hit the callback button. "Danielle, thank God," his familiar baritone filled her ear. "I've been trying to reach you." "I'm sorry, Detective. I was out in Red Rock. No signal. What's happened?" "We've had a development in your sister's case," he said, his tone carefully controlled. "A hiker found something this morning we believe belongs to Marissa." The water bottle slipped from Danielle's hand, splashing across the hot asphalt. Her friends, Sarah and Marcus, noticed her distress and hurried over. "What kind of evidence?" Danielle managed to ask, her voice a whisper. "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you drive to the White Rock Hills Loop area?" "I'll send you the coordinates." After ending the call, Danielle looked up at their concerned faces. "They found something," she said, her voice shaking. Without hesitation, Sarah placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We're coming with you." The drive took them to a less popular, more challenging part of the park. As they approached the coordinates, Danielle spotted a cluster of police vehicles. Detective Chen met them, his expression somber. "The site is about a mile from here. The terrain's too rough for regular vehicles." They piled into police SUVs for a bumpy ride along what was barely a trail. When they finally stopped, she could see a temporary canopy erected near a rocky overhang, a hub of activity for crime scene technicians and search and rescue personnel. As they hiked the remaining distance, Detective Chen fell into step beside her. "I want to prepare you, Danielle. The news isn't good." She nodded, her legs feeling like lead. Near the canopy, a man in his mid-40s with sun-weathered skin stood with a German shepherd. "Danielle, this is Malcolm Brandt," Chen said. "He made the discovery." "I'm so sorry," Malcolm said quietly, removing his baseball cap. "I was hiking with Bella here," he indicated the dog, "trying a new trail. She ran ahead and came back with this." Danielle's gaze dropped to an evidence table. Her breath caught. Bones. Unmistakably human. Pale. And weathered by exposure. "It was a radius bone," Malcolm continued gently. "From a forearm. I used to be a paramedic, so I recognized it. I marked the spot and called 911 immediately." Detective Chen guided her closer. After Mr. Brandt's call, We sent the team out. There was a severe windstorm last night. We believe it scattered remains that had been protected until now. Danielle forced herself to look, her vision blurring with tears. But it was the next piece of evidence that made her knees buckle. A larger bone, a tibia, with surgical hardware still attached. This is how we suspected it was your sister, Chen said. You mentioned in your report that Marissa had knee surgery. Yes, Danielle whispered. A skiing accident. She had pins and a plate put in. The serial numbers on the hardware match her medical records, the detective confirmed. We're waiting on DNA, but it's her. A broken sob escaped her lips. Oh, God, it's really her. Sarah wrapped an arm around her, supporting her weight. But Chen wasn't finished. His expression grew even more somber. Danielle, there's more. We found additional remains, smaller bones, found in a crevice in the cliff face. The implication hit her like a physical blow. The baby. Marissa's baby. The forensic anthropologist believes they're consistent with a late-term fetus, Chen continued, his professional demeanor barely masking his own discomfort. Some bones show evidence of scavenger activity. Danielle couldn't hold back the sobs. 4 years of hoping, of imagining scenarios where they were lost but alive, crumbled in the face of these weathered bones on a folding table. What about Ethan? She managed to ask. Did you find... No, Chen replied. No remains we can definitively identify as male. The search team is still working, but so far, nothing. How can that be? They were together. That's one of many questions we need to answer, the detective said, his expression carefully neutral. Without evidence of Mr. Voss's remains, we have to consider all possibilities. You think Ethan did this? Danielle's voice rose in disbelief. That's insane. He loved her. He was a surgeon. He saved lives. He would never... I understand this is difficult, Chen said calmly. But in cases like this, we have to examine every angle. The fact that only your sister's remains were found, that they were concealed rather than simply lost. These are factors we can't ignore. But Ethan wasn't even an experienced hiker, she protested. The idea that he could have navigated this far, done something to her, and hidden the bodies, it makes no sense. People can surprise us, the detective replied gently. The remains were found beneath that overhang, partially protected. It's possible they've been there the entire time, preserved until last night's storm dislodged them. Numbly, Danielle followed Chen and her friends back to the parking area, where the media had already gathered. She felt too drained to care about their shouted questions. I don't think I should drive right now, she told the detective. Perfectly understandable. He motioned to a young officer who took her keys. As she slid into the detective's car, Danielle caught a final glimpse of the desert landscape that had swallowed her sister and had only now begun to give up its secrets. At the station, a forensic technician took a cheek swab from Danielle for DNA comparison. Afterward, Detective Chen led her to his modest office and pulled out a thick manila folder bearing her sister's name. I'd like to go through everything again with you, he said. Sometimes details that seemed unimportant at the time take on new significance. Tell me about that Sunday. She took a deep breath, casting her mind back 4 years. Marissa called me around 8 a.m. She was excited. Said Ethan had the day off and they wanted to go for a hike. I told her no. She was 36 weeks pregnant, just 4 weeks from her due date. And she'd had that knee surgery. Yes, it still bothered her sometimes, especially with the extra weight. I told her it was a terrible idea. But Marissa could be stubborn. She said her doctor told her to stay active, that walking would help. For the next 2 hours, Chen methodically walked her through every aspect of the case. Finances, friends, family, any changes in behavior. Finally, he closed the file. I know this is difficult to consider, he said, his expression sympathetic but firm. But we found your sister's remains concealed in a remote location with no trace of her husband. We have to consider he might be responsible. But why? What possible motive? Sometimes people hide things. Financial troubles, addiction, an affair. We'll be looking into all of it. You won't find anything, Danielle said firmly, but because there's nothing to find. I hope you're right, Chen said. In the meantime, I need you to be careful. This discovery is all over the news. When cold cases heat up, it can trigger unexpected reactions. If Ethan is alive, he might try to make contact. Or if someone else was involved, they might feel threatened. If anything seems off, strange calls, someone following you, call me immediately. Danielle's house felt impossibly quiet. She collapsed onto the sofa, the weight of everything crashing down. Her gaze fell on the family photos on the shelves. Her parents, Marissa, and now her unborn niece or nephew. She was the only one left. The photos blurred as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Unable to bear the silence, she opened her laptop. On impulse, she searched for Malcolm Brandt, the hiker. His public profile was filled with photos of him and his dog, Bella, on trails throughout Nevada. One post from 3 weeks ago caught her attention. A picture of a slice of lavender honey cake from a small cafe called Desert Blooms. The mention of cake triggered a flood of memories. Marissa had been an extraordinarily talented baker. Staring at the post, Danielle decided she wanted to thank Malcolm properly. A store-bought gift felt inadequate. She would bake for him using one of Marissa's own recipes. She needed the recipe book. She knew it would be at Marissa and Ethan's house in her sister's secret spot. The 10-minute walk to their house had always been pleasant. Now each familiar landmark felt like a small grief. The house sat quietly on its corner lot, overgrown and neglected. She let herself in, the air musty and stale. The bedroom felt especially hollow. Above the bed was a decorative mirror that swung open to reveal a shallow cabinet. Danielle pressed the hidden latch. There it was, a leather-bound notebook with Marissa's recipes embossed in gold. A sound from outside made her freeze, a car engine idling. She peered through the curtains. A dark sedan sat at the curb. 3 men emerged, approaching the house with purposeful strides. One wore a distinctive brown fedora. She heard them at the front door, not knocking, but working at the lock. The metallic scratching sent adrenaline flooding through her system. She'd left her phone at home. Racing for the kitchen landline, her hip caught a vase on the hall table. It shattered, the crash deafening in the quiet house. The scratching stopped. Through the window, she saw the men backing away, returning to their car. The man in the hat turned slightly. In profile, the way he carried himself, he looked like Ethan, but that was impossible. After they drove off, she swept up the broken porcelain, her heart racing. Who were those men? If one was Ethan, why break into his own house? She reached for the kitchen phone, but the line was dead. She'd let the bill lapse years ago. Upstairs, retrieving the recipe book, her eyes fell on a framed photo on the shelf. Ethan at a medical conference, wearing the exact same brown fedora. A chill ran down her spine. She grabbed the photo and the book and fled, the 10-minute walk home feeling like an hour. Only when she was safely inside her own house, door deadbolted, did she breathe again. She immediately called Detective Chen. I think 3 men tried to break into Marissa's house, she said, words tumbling out. And Detective, I think one of them might have been Ethan. Did you get a clear look at his face? No, she admitted. Just a glimpse. But the hat, the way he moved. I'll send a patrol unit to check the area, Chen sighed. But I can't justify posting an officer there indefinitely based on this. He repeated his warning for her to be careful before ending the call. Exhausted, Danielle slumped against the counter. The recipe book lay open. She decided to bake Marissa's honey cake for Malcolm. Making a mental list, she realized she was out of eggs, and the good vanilla extract her sister always used. The familiar routine of grocery shopping would be calming, she told herself. The store parking lot was well lit. As Danielle reached for her bags, movement at the adjacent gas station caught her eye. 3 men were exiting the convenience store. Her blood turned to ice. The brown fedora. She ducked down, peering over the dashboard. The men stood near a black sedan, their conversation intense. Fragments carried on the night air. Ledger has to be, and careful with the search. As she watched, a 4th man in veterinary scrubs jogged over, carrying a small cooler. They all climbed into the sedan. Every rational part of Danielle's brain screamed at her to call Chen. But a different impulse took hold. If that was Ethan, she had to know. She had to understand. Before she could second-guess herself, she started her car and followed. She kept a safe distance as they navigated through town. On the outskirts, traffic thinned. The sedan turned onto Highway 160, heading into the empty desert. Maintaining cover became difficult. She fumbled for her phone, dialing Chen while keeping an eye on the road. "You're following them?" His voice was sharp with disbelief. "Danielle, turn around right now. This is dangerous." The detective was right. She was being foolish. She slowed, looking for a place to make a U-turn. Just as she completed the turn, headlights flooded her rearview mirror. The black sedan had also turned and was approaching fast. "Oh, God," she breathed, dropping her phone. "They saw me." Her Honda was no match for their car. It caught up, riding her bumper aggressively. Then it swerved, pulling alongside. The passenger, the man in the fedora, gestured for her to pull over. She ignored him, gripping the steering wheel. The sedan swerved into her lane, forcing her toward the shoulder. She chose sand over a collision, her car fishtailing to a dusty stop. Before she could react, the sedan blocked her escape. She frantically hit the door locks as the man in the fedora got out, a tire iron in his hand. The safety glass exploded inward. Hands unlocked the door, dragging her out. In the dome light, she finally got a clear look at his face. It wasn't Ethan. The relief was short-lived. Her wrists were zip-tied, a gag stuffed in her mouth. They bundled her into the sedan's back seat. One of them got into her Honda and drove it away. "I told you it was her from the news," the driver said, glancing at her in the mirror. "Saw her from inside the house, watching us." They blindfolded her. The journey seemed endless. When the car finally stopped, they pulled her out into the desert night. The blindfold came off. Before her stood a large, derelict-looking warehouse. Inside, however, it blazed with fluorescent light, a fully functional, clandestine medical facility. "Welcome to our little operation," said the man who had worn the fedora, a cruel smile on his face. "I'm Rico." They marched her down a corridor. Through an open door, she glimpsed figures on beds, IV lines snaking from their arms. They forced her onto a bed in an empty room, strapping her wrists to the side rails. Only then did Rico remove the gag. Danielle screamed. Rico backhanded her. "Do that again, and you'll never see another day. Clear?" She nodded, tasting blood. "Go get our surgeon," Rico told one of his men. "This worked out better than we planned." The doors to the room banged open. 2 guards dragged in a figure in filthy clothes. Danielle's heart stopped. It was Ethan. He was alive. Thinner, his face gaunt, but alive. They forced him into surgical scrubs. He moved mechanically to a scrub sink, but when he turned and saw her, his face went white. "Danny!" The word was strangled. He whirled on Rico. Absolutely not. I am not operating on my sister-in-law. Your sister-in-law? Rico feigned surprise. No wonder I saw her at your house. We just wanted to grab your ledger for leverage to get you back in line, but then she followed us. She makes much better leverage than some old paperwork, don't you think? The boss is getting impatient, Doc, Rico continued, his tone hardening. Dominic wants you back on the job. You operate, or little Danny here becomes our next donor. Your choice. Ethan's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine. But she doesn't get touched. That's the deal. They transferred Danielle to a wheelchair, positioning her in a corner where she could see everything. An unconscious young woman was wheeled in and placed on the operating table. Time to earn your keep, Doc, Rico said. And while you're at it, you're going to teach our new recruit here. He gestured to the man in veterinary scrubs. Meet Dr. Paulson. He's a vet, but the basics are the same, right? Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then moved to the table. A man with no choices left. Itsume, a muscular guard, dragged Danielle from the operating room. Where are you taking her? Ethan demanded. Not your business, Rico said smoothly. But rest assured, Doc, as long as you're useful, she stays breathing. The guard shoved her into a stark concrete cell. Won't be long, he said with a leering grin. Boss likes the new ones broken and proper. The door slammed shut. Alone, Danielle noticed something odd about the single bed. Under the pillow, her fingers found a ballpoint pen. Between the mattress and the rusty frame, she found folded sheets of paper. It was Ethan's handwriting, their wedding vows, and letters addressed to Marissa. I promise to love you through every surgery that runs late, every cake that doesn't rise. The lock clicked. The muscular man entered, carrying leather straps and a riding crop. Time for your breaking in session, he announced. Danielle backed away, her mind racing. The pen was in her hand, concealed. Please, she said, her voice breaking with genuine fear. I won't cause any trouble. That's what they all say. He reached for her. As his hands gripped her shoulders, she spat in his face. His expression shifted to rage. He backhanded her, sending her sprawling. As he loomed over her, her hand came up in one swift motion, driving the pen deep into his left eye. His scream was inhuman. As he writhed, she lunged for the gun holstered at his hip. He grabbed her ankle, his remaining eye wild with pain. I'll kill you, he roared. She twisted, bringing the gun around. The gunshot was deafening in the small, soundproofed room. The man's grip loosened. She scrambled to her feet, gun shaking, and fired twice at the lock mechanism. The door swung open. The corridor was empty. She ran, choosing a direction at random. Voices ahead made her duck into an alcove. Two men in scrubs walked past. A stairwell appeared. She chose up. As she reached the landing, strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Don't shoot, an urgent voice whispered. I'm a friend. Ethan sent me. The man, Tom, was thin and haggard. He lifted his shirt to reveal a massive surgical scar. 7 days ago, I was supposed to die here, he said quickly. Botched surgery. Ethan operated on me again, off the books. Saved my life. He told me if I ever got the chance to run, I should take it. I saw you on the security cameras. We need to move now. She lowered the gun. He led her through the corridors to a motor pool. They climbed into his old Ford truck. At the security checkpoint, the guard waved them through without a second glance. They were out. It's organ harvesting, Tom said grimly as they sped through the desert. Dominic Torino runs it. They grab people who won't be missed. Ethan's been their surgeon for 4 years. Forced to do it. At a remote gas station, Danielle dialed 911, then Detective Chen. The response was massive. SWAT vans, patrol cars, and ambulances staged nearby. Danielle and Tom were escorted to a mobile command unit. Captain Torres, the tactical commander, debriefed them. "We'll get them out," she assured them. "Both the victims and your brother-in-law." From a patrol car, Danielle watched the raid unfold. For nearly 40 minutes, the sounds of combat echoed across the desert. Finally, the gunfire ceased. Officers marched out a long line of cuffed suspects, including Rico and the vet. Then came the victims, a heartbreaking parade of the saved. She spotted Ethan walking slowly, flanked by 2 officers. "I need to go to him," she told the officer in her car. He radioed for permission, then nodded. She was 10 feet from him when a man in an expensive suit approached from a separate building, guns in both hands. Dominic Torino. He fired wildly. Officers dove for cover. In a blur, Ethan charged, tackling Dominic from his blind side. They crashed to the ground, wrestling for the weapons. Ethan's medical knowledge against Dominic's desperate strength. In seconds, Ethan had one of the guns pressed to Dominic's temple. "You killed her!" Ethan's voice was raw, primal. "You killed my wife and my baby." "Go ahead, Doc," Dominic taunted with a bloody smile. "Pull the trigger!" Ethan's hand shook. For a long moment, Danielle thought he would fire. Then, his shoulders slumped. "Number, I've had enough death because of you. You don't get to make me a killer, too." Officers swarmed in, restraining Dominic. Danielle rushed to Ethan as he collapsed to his knees. "That was incredibly stupid," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "And incredibly brave." Later, in the back of a patrol car, the whole truth spilled out. "I had a gambling problem," Ethan began, his voice hollow. "I owed $300,000 to what I thought were just loan sharks. That day, they found us on the trail. They demanded payment. Marissa, she tried to call 911. Dominic shot her, said it was a lesson." His voice broke. "They kept me alive to work off the debt as their surgeon. I was as guilty as them." "You were a victim, Ethan," Danielle said softly. "You did what you had to do to survive. A few weeks ago, on our anniversary, I dreamed about her," he whispered. "She told me she was waiting, but I had to be a good man first. That's when I stopped operating." The patrol car pulled away from the warehouse, leaving the controlled chaos behind. The sunrise was still hours away, but for the first time in 4 years, Danielle and Ethan were moving towards something other than darkness. Healing would be a long, difficult road, but in the quiet of the car, cutting through the desert night, it finally